So the situation at Antioch isn't looking very good for Crusaders. They're running low on food. Kaboga's on his way with his military forces. They're still stuck outside the city. So they're running into a pretty big amount of problems here. And since they're running into a pretty big amount of problems, they end up having a big meeting. So all four of the leaders come together to have a big meeting. So you have Godfrey, you have Bohemond, you have Raymond, and you have Robert, and they all get together and they have a big meeting. And in this big meeting, Bohemond is talking, and Bohemond's like, "Hey, if I can take over the city of Antioch, like all by myself, can I keep the city for myself?" And the other Crusader leaders are like, "Yeah, sure, Bohemond. Like we've been here for 7 months. If you can get inside the city by yourself, go ahead and do so." And Bohemond's like, "Ah, sweet. I'll see you guys later." So what the Air Crusade leaders didn't know is that Bohemond had been bribing one of the city guards. He had been putting a ladder up against the city wall at night and then climbing up there and talking to the city guard. And he'd been giving him money. And he convinced that city guard member that he had been bribing. He's like, "Hey, guy that I've been bribing, open up the city gates for me." So he goes there one night, gets the guy to open up the city gates for him. City gates of Antioch gets opened up. Bohemond gets his troops inside the city, murders off the garrison, and takes over the city. So before the arrival of Kaboga, Bohemond's able to convince the Armenian Christian to open up the gates of Antioch. I'm going to write that down for number 5, what I highlighted. Or sorry, for number 6. So number 6, Bohemond convinces the Armenian Christian to open up the gates of Antioch. So I said Bohemond's able to get up a ladder. He's been bribing this guy for a while, gets him to open up the gates of the city, gets his troops inside, kills the garrison. Now there was a small holdout inside the city at a cathedral there, or citadel. There was a holdout of a group that had retreated there. But besides that, the city was now under control of the Crusaders. So, Bohemond, he's got troops inside. Crusaders wake up in the morning. They're like, "Oh, I guess he took over the city." And then the Crusaders move all their forces inside the city. And the day that happens is on June 3rd. 2 days later, Kaboga shows up. So Antioch falls to Crusaders on June 3rd. They get their troops inside. 2 days later, Kaboga then shows up with his military force, and now he's sieging the city of Antioch. So the Crusaders have been 7 months, been trying to take over the city of Antioch. They finally did so, and then Kaboga shows up 2 days later, and then he's sieging the city of Antioch, meaning that he's cutting off from food and water. And there already wasn't food and water in Antioch as there was, so yeah. The Crusaders decided that their best option was to try and get Kaboga to have a duel one-on-one with the Crusaders. They're like, "All right, we'll go suggest a duel." So Peter Hermit, they're like, "Hey, Peter Hermit, you've been hanging out with us. Why don't you go and talk to Kaboga?" So Peter Hermit leaves the city of Antioch, goes over to the camp of Kaboga, and he's like, "Hey, Kaboga, we shall have a duel between one Crusader and one of your guys in your army, and then whoever wins gets to keep the city, and whoever loses has to leave." And Kaboga's like, "What? Why would I do that for? Like, I'm in a pretty good position here. Like, you guys are ones that are being sieged." So, duel suggestion is shot down by Kaboga, and then Peter Hermit goes back to the city, and then he informs the rest of the Crusade leaders. Is like, "Oh yeah, he didn't go for it." So things weren't looking very well, or weren't looking very good in Antioch for the Crusaders until a vision. So there were a whole bunch of priests that had come along on the crusade, and one of these priests, Peter Bartholomew, he has a vision. He has a vision that the Holy Lance is the lance that pierces Christ's side during his crucifixion. He has a vision that this Holy Lance, what's in the picture right here, is buried in St. Peter's Cathedral in Antioch. And if they can find this holy relic, then the Crusaders will be successful in defeating Kaboga, who's outside the city walls. And people are like, "Oh, all right, well, that sounds pretty cool." I mean, priests had a vision about this. So a whole bunch of people, they're all excited about this vision that Peter Hermit had. So then Peter Hermit goes to St. Peter's Cathedral, and then he has people, they're like digging up and they're looking around for this holy lance. So they're digging around, all looking for it and everything, and they can't find it at all. And they're like, "Man, Peter Hermit, are you sure that this holy relic, the holy lance, is actually here?" He's like, "Yeah, it's here." And then Peter Hermit jumps down into this hole, starts digging around, and lo and behold, he pulls out the Holy Lance. And then people were all excited and everything. The Crusaders leaders, however, weren't so excited because, funny story, the Holy Lance was already found. And it's in the Holy Roman Empire. But that's okay. You know, people can't read back in the day, so they didn't know that the Holy Lance was already in the Holy Roman Empire. Okay. So now with all these people all excited and everything to go march outside city walls, the Crusade leaders decide, well, we might as well go march outside city walls. People will all have their morale up and everything. People are excited. Let's go do it. So let's go ahead and make it number 7 and write down Crusaders march out of the city to meet Kaboga. So the Crusaders decide that they're going to leave the city of Kaboga or not leave the city of Kaboga, leave the city of Antioch to go fight against Kaboga. So city gates of Antioch open up and the Crusaders start marching outside the city and they start forming up outside the city. Now Kaboga saw the Crusaders forming up outside the city and he decided that instead of attacking the Crusaders right away, that he would let them completely form up outside the city. That way he could smash their entire army against the city walls and defeat them all at one time instead of fighting a long out battle over a course of several days and let them go back inside the city and have to siege the city more. So he kind of just wants to finish it off. So he decides just to wait for all the Crusaders to get outside the city wall. The problem is, of course, we talked about before, the Crusaders had an army of 35,000 people, which meant it was going to take them a long time to get everybody outside the city. So the Crusaders are coming outside the city, they're forming up, and it's taking forever, and they're still coming outside the city walls, still coming outside the city walls, and Kaboga's sitting there watching them. And after a while, Kaboga's like, oh, there's way more of these guys than I thought. So he decides that he's going to move from the position that he's at down towards the Crusaders. Except the problem is, when he moved down towards the Crusaders, he moved down to flat land. And as soon as he moved down to flat land, the Crusaders hit him with a heavy cavalry charge. It broke up the ranks of Kaboga's troops. So his troops all got separated. There were several people that were with Kaboga, several lords that weren't very loyal to him anyways. And as soon as Crusaders hit them with a heavy cavalry charge, they're like, haha, nope, see ya. And they just left immediately. So Crusaders hit Kaboga's army with a heavy cavalry charge. His troops break apart. Kaboga is forced to retreat, and a lot of his lords just kind of bailed on him as a sign of first of anything going wrong. And there you go. Go ahead and make it number 8, if you would, please. And we're going to write down Crusaders advance, causing panic to soar in the ranks of Kaboga's troops. So, number 8, Crusaders advance, causing panic to soar in the ranks of Kaboga's troops. So, with that, the city of Antioch is now under control of the Crusaders. So now it's under their control. And with it being under their control now, some people had then heard that the Holy Lance had actually been found and was totally in the Holy Roman Empire. And they then went to go talk to Peter Bartholomew about this. So Peter Bartholomew, of course, he had said that the Holy Lance, that he found there, that it was an actual Holy Lance. And then some people were like, hey, Peter, we heard that there was only a Holy Lance in the Holy Roman Empire. Like, what's up? We can't have 2 Holy Lances. And then Peter Herman's like, no. This is a true Holy Lance. I had a vision. It's all true. And to prove it, I shall do a trial by fire. Normally in trial by fire, what ends up happening is that you burn somebody's hands with like a hot iron bar, and then you check on it after a couple days, and if it's healing good, according to a priest, you were innocent. If it wasn't healing good, according to the priest, you were guilty. But Peter Bartholomew, he was not all about that. He decided he was going to take it up a notch. So instead of holding a red hot iron bar, walking a couple paces, and then having the priest judge if his hands healed correctly a couple days, Peter Bartholomew decided to build a giant bonfire. Now, one about the same size as like a school classroom. Okay, so about that size. And he said he was going to He said he was going to walk through that bonfire from one side to the other side, and he would not be burned because he was telling the truth, and therefore God would protect him. And so obviously, people in the Crusading forces like, we gotta go see this. So a whole bunch of Crusaders show up, and they, make a big circle around the bonfire. And then Peter Hermit, he's on one side of the bonfire. A whole bunch of people, they're on the other side of the bonfire, And then Peter Hermit, he walks into the fire, and people are watching this. And they're like, oh, okay, he's walking the fire. Maybe he's telling the truth. But pretty soon that walking into the fire thing turns into just a flat-out sprint to the other side. So he's sprinting to the other side of the bonfire as soon as he got inside of it. And then when he gets to the end or the other side of the bonfire, Crusaders are watching are like, I don't know, I want to make sure he's telling the truth. So they push him back in. So Peter Barthorn, bam, he gets pushed back into the bonfire when he gets to the other side because, people want to make sure he's telling the truth there. So then he's running around the bonfire for a while, and then people keep on pushing him back in. And eventually, though, Peter Bartholomew does make it out of the bonfire, and he does live for 3 days, and then he dies from severe burns. So there you go. The Holy Lance, though, they end up keeping it around. They're like, nope, that Holy Lance, that's a true relic. Let's keep it around anyways. So even though Peter Bartholomew is deaded, they keep it around the Holy Lance as a relic. So now we have more than one Holy Lance. All right. So that's it for today's notes.